Hey, welcome everyone to Whoa, wrong show there. Thru Port Collective.
I was wondering who was going to be the first one to do it.
Well, hey, we made it like 6 months before it happened.
Right.
Yeah. Sonic State ran. We'll get it. We'll get it eventually here. So yeah. Hey, welcome to Thru Port Collective, for reals, and we're glad you're here. Hello, everybody in the chat. Of course, we got Dan, Sonic Neutronic, with us today, and the first thing we just want to mention something. I'm going to pull this up here. It's kind of important. One of our friends has passed away. Now, we just wanted to read what Sophia Hawken has written in concerning her husband Dominic, who is a friend of ours. And this, we're not doing a tribute on the show. The family has asked, to kind of hold off on that stuff. So I just wanted to read this that she had written, and just so in case you don't know, it says, "Hi everyone, this is Sophia Hawken, aka Mrs. Wiggly. I'm sure you have all spotted Dominic's absence and are wondering what happened to Dominic. Unfortunately, Dominic's health issues turned out to be much more serious than we could ever anticipate. Dominic was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer early January, and by the time his biopsy results came through, it was sadly too late for any kind of surgery or treatment. Dominic passed away peacefully at home, surrounded by his most beloved ones this Monday, the 6th of February. We are in process of arranging his memorial service scheduled for the 24th of March in London, Chiswick, where anybody who would like to attend would be more than welcome, followed by a celebration of Dominic's life and achievements. Once this has been confirmed, I'll put out another post giving full details of the event, streaming links. Just give charity pages of Dominic's choice for anyone who would like to make any donations. I'm sure you can appreciate this is an extremely difficult time for us as a family. My priority is to protect and safeguard our daughter, Lula May, who, as you can imagine, is utterly...
It's a hard
Sorry,
one.
would one of you guys pick that up?
Yeah. She says, as you can imagine, is utterly devastated by her daddy's passing. Therefore, could I kindly request you respect our privacy and avoid sending messages, gifts, media posts of any kind at this time. Huge love to you all, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the amazing support you gave my wonderful husband over the last few years. As he said, some truly epic times. I'll be in touch soon." And so that's their request at this point.
Yeah, so we don't want to get into it, and we want to be able to leave this because this thing in March is going to be important. So we just wanted to mention that. I'm pretty sure everybody's heard already, but we're just really, on behalf of all, we're just really sorry to see him go, and he'll be missed. So
for sure,
we don't. Yeah. So
here's to you, Dominic.
Yeah. Indeed. So, well, on to better things. Glad everybody is here, and won't we catch up before we get to Dan and introduce Dan? Let's let's hear about what you guys are up to and how you guys are doing. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing all right. I had a little time out, and I went down to Florida. Marshall, I was down there. Not too.
Say hi. What?
There really kind of wasn't time, but I feel like I was probably only about an hour away because I was by Anna Maria Island.
Oh, okay. I don't know where that is.
Well, I mean, it's out there outside of Sarasota.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Sarasota's not too far from me.
So I didn't think it's too far.
Nope.
From you, but I didn't know exactly. So, but yeah, it was a nice little time out. I had a funny little experience that I posted about on Facebook that involved crows and a creaking metal door. that I woke up to one morning that was really bizarre and creepy. Speaking of Halloween and horror type films, it was super creepy, and I was half awake. So I wrote about it because it was very Hitchcockian. It was strange as hell.
Wow.
Because there's like a whole murder of crows out there just doing the little soft caw talking thing that they do, you know. It was crazy. Anyway, that was kind of the highlight of what I did. Other than that, there was beach time and some grouper tacos. So I just kind of had a little vacation. That's all I've done for the last week.
That is awesome.
Yeah, definitely needed. How you been, Marshall?
I've been pretty good. I've been super busy, unfortunately, mostly with work, so I haven't had a lot of time to do much else this week so far, but we still got a couple days left, so hopefully I can get on to some things. Game soundtrack stuff still going along, and still needing to get the rest of my live set finished, so yeah.
You got a lot of things on the table.
I do. It's good, though. It's good. Keep me busy.
Yeah. Well, I've been busy also with a lot of different things, but I'll show you one little project I'm working on, and I have cleared stuff for a little repairs. I got some IC sockets in, and wondering if anybody would like to take a guess as to what this device is here that I'm working on this week.
That looks like
So first level, this is the box for it.
Huh.
Guesses? It is,
Power supply?
Nah. So Brett is pretty close. I'll actually be working on a CR78 soon, like in a week or two probably. But this is...
Nope, the big reveal.
Over here. This is the CR68.
Oh, dude. That is
How cool is that?
cool.
Yeah, isn't that sweet?
That is awesome.
That's fun, man.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll set it up here so people can gander at it. So yeah, really cool drum machine, and I'm looking forward to having a little play with it. It's not mine; it's my buddy's, but I'm swapping out. I'm installing this. Let's see, where is it at here? Well, this goodie here, and it's going to add MIDI to it, as well as some other really nice functionality, so you could actually run it from any sort of regular sequencer, which you're not able to do before.
That just have
So-
pre-programmed
that's so cool.
patterns in it before, right?
What's that?
It's just pre-programmed patterns in there?
Yeah, and so this is it's a little more simple than the more famous CR78, and doesn't have as much you can do with it. But yeah, I mean, it's got these cool little switches here to type in, put in your rock 4, or hey, you want to do some disco, because that's really hip and happening. Your sambas and
Just got to push them in at the same time and see what happens.
yeah,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
you like your Dimension D or your 1176.
That's it. That's it.
That's
Put
cool.
it into nuclear mode.
So I didn't play with it before, but I'm kind of wondering if there is some sort of unintended functionality like that where it engage two patterns at once. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, that should be fun to hear. And my buddy's so excited. He's got the CR78. This one has the Tolex, and he's got a CR78 come in from Europe that will have the wood cabinet with it. So very fun.
With that MIDI implementation, will you be able to access the individual sounds?
Yeah, everything will be accessible just like you're using the other drum machines. So it does quite a bit open up the functionality. I mean, to be able to sequence. So he uses a Polyan Seek. I don't know if you've seen those, but they're very long sequencer that's just got huge rows of buttons on them, and it's got a little screen and stuff on it, but very easy to use. And so he uses these sequences as drum machines that way.
That's cool.
So
That's going to be fun, man. And so you're not going to end up with it, but you just get to borrow it from time to time, or it is yours?
Yeah. So I'll do the mods on both machines, and I'll probably take some samples off it or something. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, you don't see this stuff so often, so it's fun to have it kind of come through. Something really cool every once in a while, and get to have a poke and some fun at it that I wouldn't normally get to have.
Definitely.
So, well, Dan, man, how are you doing?
Doing really well, thanks. I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's I know we've not talked a great deal in the past, but I feel like I know all three of you from Team US and all kinds of different shows that have been going on over the past couple of years. So yeah, it's really great to to be live with you guys at the same time.
Yeah, so we I think we all met each other various times, not at the same episode, but we met each other through the Geosynths show. And I remember you being on there. I was like, wow, this guy's really cool, and I like your music. And I think from that point on, I know, like, I had just, was watching your channel, and anytime anything came up, I was like, this is cool to check out. And in the past, you had given me some recommendations about some of these old horror flick soundtracks, and I had actually gone and I'm not super into horror, but I had gone and watched some of the other things that had been, it had been decades since I had seen, like, Escape from New York. I'm like, okay, I got to go check it out. Let's go listen to the soundtrack, and it's been awesome. So, Dan, tell us, like, just briefly, like, a little about yourself, how you got into music, and tell us about the kind of, music you make. And then remind me, you guys got to remind me, because then we'll play some of it.
Yes.
It's a weird story for me, because I've not really been into music particularly as I've been growing up. I started off with, like, the Commodore VIC-20 and the Commodore 64, which is obviously an analog synthesizer in itself. So I really grew up with the Commodore 64, and then in England, I never got into traditional instruments, and I'd never really touched a keyboard or piano, never sort of played these things, but then house music and sort of breakdancing music and things like that came along, and that was absolutely huge in England. I mean, I know it was big here too, but it was the scene was massive in England. So for me, I'm still kind of stuck in that house music era. That really is for me, where it's at. But I never knew how that music was really created. I didn't know anything about those drum machines or synths. I just really appreciated the music. So it took until 2018, believe it or not, till I actually touched an analog synthesizer. And it was a weird story, but I got laid off from work I think it was late or mid 2018. And when I got in that afternoon, for some reason, I started looking at MIDI keyboards online. Like, I have no clue why I did it, but it was just one of those things. I was in a weird frame of mind, and I started watching videos about MIDI keyboards and all this kind of stuff. And then I sort of remembered all these horror films that I loved, and I started thinking, oh, you know what? I'm going to start researching all those synthesizers that I remember John Carpenter using on, like, Halloween and Escape from New York and stuff, because I did not know what it was. I did not know the Prophet 5 or any of that kind of stuff. So I kind of did my research, and I thought to myself, oh, Prophet 5, I'm going to buy myself one of these. And then I looked it up, and I was like, oh shit, it's been out of circulation for like 30 years. What am I going to do? And that's when I kind of stumbled across the Prophet 6, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to order myself one of those and learn this thing and get stuck in. But obviously, like everybody else, I got gear acquisition syndrome. I bought way too many synths. I went off and bought a Rev 2, a Pro 2, a Pro 3, a Sub 37, just a stupid amount of gear. And I appreciate what you said about my music, but it's really simple stuff. I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. I'm reasonably good technically with it, but I'm not exactly a particularly good composer. So it's really all about texture for me and just enjoying those sounds. So I found myself a bit overwhelmed with all that gear, to be honest. So I've kind of sold everything off, and I'm now just down to this Prophet 5 and just really focusing and digging into this one synthesizer. And I have to say, it's I use this thing for about 2 or 3 hours a day at least. I really dig into this, and I really feel like I know this thing inside out, right? So I'm hoping I can take it to, some new levels with my music now that I'm a bit more streamlined and a bit more focused. I've kind of had 2 or 3 years of too much gear, and I can see Wagyu saying I got to get the Pro 3 back. I do. I know I got to get the Pro 3 back. We'll talk about the Pro 3. We'll talk about that in a minute, because that was one synth that drove me to be really creative. But it was the fact that it was sat right next to me and not on stands behind me, because that was driving me insane. Synths behind me, I had them all linked up with MIDI and stuff like that, but maybe I'm just getting old, but I didn't want to turn around and walk across the room and go do it. So I was getting guilt, right? I was feeling guilty about all these synths, so I sold them all.
It happens. Right? You know, it is one of those things where if you have too much stuff, you can not have enough time to really learn the hardware very well. So, you know.
And some of them I didn't like certain things, like the Rev 2. I used to enjoy programming all the way up to bringing in the second oscillator, and it had like a mix control that balanced the two oscillators. So it's like, as soon as you've got like a nice powerful sound from oscillator 1 and you want number 2, you have to kind of turn the mix across, and it's like the volume dies on 1 and it brings up 2. It was just things like that were driving me crazy. Whereas this Prophet 5 absolutely blows all of those synths completely totally out of the water. I was kidding myself for 2 years that the Prophet 6 was doing the job, and then as soon as I got this 5, I was like, holy crap! People had said that a Prophet 6 was 95% of a Prophet 5. It is not at all. It is a completely different beast. It sounds different. Yeah, you can Starsky it and make it be exactly the same thing if you sort of, you know, make both synths go to a specific sound. But this thing, it blows it out of the water for me completely. And it's nothing to do with the vintage knob either. It's the raw tone of the oscillators, the filter, everything. It's a different beast entirely.
Yeah, I felt like it was a disservice that you know, people really wanted it to be the Prophet 5, and I like the Prophet 6 functionally speaking. I like it a lot better than the Prophet 5 or 10, but you're right, it's just like they're totally different synthesizers. And I think same thing with like the OB6 and the OB XA, it's like you can't treat them as like they're trying to be the same thing. They're not, and they both have great things that they do. But yeah, really kind of agree with that.
There was a bunch of stuff I wasn't really using on the Prophet 6 too. Like I would rarely touch the distortion. I would rarely use the sequencer. I think if anything, what I miss on this Prophet 5, I miss having an arpeggiator, because that was, when you're not particularly good at music, an arpeggiator is exactly, you know, it gets you through certain situations. It can get kind of a beat down with the synthesizer. And I really miss a clock syncable LFO as well. I think that is, yeah, well, you know, it's, you know, you're just having to kind of balance the LFO if you want it to be in time with your music to any sort of rhythmic effects with the filter and stuff like that. So yeah, they're about the only two things that I miss on it. I really don't care about the effects. I don't care about the distortion and the sequencer and the high pass filter. I mean, yeah, if you're out on stage with the Prophet 6, which I'd never go on stage. I mean, I'd be laughed off stage, right? but yeah, so I would never use things like that high pass filter particularly. I mean, yeah, so the 5 for me is a real, you know, it's like a real studio centerpiece and the only piece I've got these days. So yeah, and I mean, I feed this thing straight into Ableton too. So everything I do is in Ableton. So I've got all the real-time effects in there, you know, sends, delays, all that kind of stuff, or EQ or whatever I want to do, right? So
yeah, that's the way to do it. That's how I work too.
Yeah, that's great.
It's rare that I'll use onboard effects on any of the instruments I have. The exception to that would maybe be the Virus. Sometimes I'll use the effects in the Virus, but yeah, most of the time I'm in the box with effects.
I mean, they're fun that you can save them to the patch. Like, the one thing I did like on that Prophet 6 was like the little phaser that it had on it. I would like to turn that really low down, really slow, and just have it kind of giving that kind of left-right kind of vibe to it. But, you know, Cryss and I were talking about this the other day, but I really don't care that the Prophet 5 is a mono output at all. It just does not bother me at all. I never used that stereo spread tool that was on the Prophet 6, because I found that it felt like it diluted the sound. I'm really about like powerful sounds and really powerful textures and stuff, and I don't know, sending it left and right kind of diluted it for me. But I can see where there are occasions that you'd want that. I mean, the 6 on stage would destroy the 5 for that reason. You'd be quite limited in what you could do with a 5, right, or a 10 or whatever.
Yeah, but if you are running in a DAW with a mono synth like that, you just duplicate the channel and pan them left and right, and there you have stereo.
Exactly, or just change the delay slightly on the left and the right, and you get kind of ping-ponging and all. Yeah, exactly. Or even use things like that Ozone Imager or something like that. Even if I'm just playing it by myself here, just Ozone Image it, just so that it kind of gives
it out a little bit.
Pseudo stereo. But again, I don't listen with headphones either. I've got monitors and a subwoofer, so I like my room to just be kind of pressurized by sound, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if everything was stereo, then nothing's mono, right? Like, you know what I mean? So kick drum and bass, why are those mono, right? Because they need to right here. And if you start moving them around like that, okay, that's kind of fun or whatever. But like to your point, it sort of dilutes the sound. And if everything's going stereo the whole time, there's nothing right down the middle that's doing that. So, yeah, to your point, that's exactly cool about why. Well, it's like any mono synth. It's just that's got that thing. You know, it's cool to me.
Yeah, and you know, I sometimes watch YouTube videos, and I'll kind of listen to somebody working on a patch on a I don't know, a polybrute or any of these kind of things where you can do effects things. I kind of listen to the things that they're raving about, and I'm like, it's kind of not doing it for me, really. It's it's really about the raw tone of this thing, and you know, it really delivers. It really delivers. As Marshall knows with the P10, and Cryss has obviously got P. Again, I can't play many notes either, so the 5 is plenty for me. And the thing sounds absolutely massive anyway. I'm not sure even what a 10 would. I'm not even sure what I'd do with the other 5 note voices, right?
Well, the biggest thing is when you get a lot of long releases going on, and you have some pretty big chords going. 5 is you're going to have some voice stealing going on.
Which I do hear that going on, but I sometimes think that that's okay because of it sounding so big that to have all that other stuff hanging around while I'm trying to play the next bit would be kind of overwhelming a bit sometimes.
Yeah.
The voice stealing is also kind of like it has its own character that way as well. So, and there's a lot of I think there's plenty of examples of music that was done professionally, obviously on the Prophet 5, where you hear some of that in the music. So
yeah, and I've seen people writing on the reviews that it's a good job you can kind of make it into 5 voice modes so that you can achieve those kind of things. Of course, you know, limit the voices. I don't know if you can do 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's just 5 and 10, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you. I haven't tried limiting mine. I didn't know you could even do that, to be honest.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Have you updated yours to like the latest firmware with the patch stacking and all that kind of stuff?
No, I haven't updated mine yet.
Right.
I haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, because they've added splits, so you can split the keyboard with 2 patches. But again, Cryss and I talked about this the other day. If I was going to get a Prophet 10, I want 2 of the programmer lines. I want to be able to select A and B on a completely different programming line from each other. Because I feel like it's kind of like a hack job a little bit, that you kind of have to like do button combinations to get the stack and the split, right? It's a little bit hack to me, that. A bit.
Well, it seems like it would be if you had a Prophet 5, rather than, you know, selling or something and getting a Prophet 10, it would be better to add just another Prophet 5 module with your keyboard, and that would give you ultimately the most versatile setup. And then, you know, you would actually be able to have, you know, a stereo patch going if that's what you wanted. Now, of course, if you're using your DAW, you can do anything that you want. You know, you can multi-track, but if you're just doing stuff and you're playing live or you're just doing it for enjoyment, that'd be a kind of a nice thing, because you could actually have them hard panned left and right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can buy the board, right? You can buy the because the Prophet 10 and the Prophet 5 are exactly the same setup. There's nothing different about them at all, apart from a stacked main board, right? And
second voice board. Yep.
You know, it's crazy. Like somebody the other day was saying, they were talking about the Mini Freak, and they were saying, can't believe all this sound comes from this tiny synth about this big. And I'm thinking, you could fit a Prophet 10 inside that. I've handled the main board, and it's about that big. It's not.
It's not big.
No,
But
it's
you remember when they released these and they had like a capacitor that was added that needed to be removed or something.
Yeah.
Remember that whole deal?
Yeah.
Yes, I cracked mine open and I see this little tiny PCB in there, and that's the synth, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot less in here than I thought there was gonna be.
It's like
It's
that
the same
guy
in the
that
OBX8.
posted. Yeah, it was some guy that posted a photo when he opened up his OBX8, and there was like he sucked shoes in there and some some other stuff.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, in a way, it's amazing that they've shrunk the technology that small. Like in terms of the analog guts are now so tiny. You don't need.
It's a little bit worrying, actually. It's kind of like in 30 years, is that going to be repairable or what? I don't know.
Yeah, it still is. It just takes a different skill set, and so for all of us that have been working on stuff that looks like this, it's a little bit different thing to get to some of that surface mount stuff, but it is definitely doable.
So here's the thing, right? So you remember that capacitor issue, right? I thought I'd escaped that big time. I was like, haha, it's been out for 2 years. I'm good, right? So I ordered a Prophet 5. And it turned up, and guess what serial number I got? I got number 30. Brand new, 2 years after release. I was like, what? And it turned out that it needed the capacitor fix still doing on it. It hadn't been done in recall. But the weird thing was my Prophet 5 broke down after a week. It just went into a complete spaz mode. And it was making all kinds of crackling noises, and it was done. It would not work at all. So Sequential sent me a new mainboard, but I had to give them like a $300 deposit to get the board.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, but I you know what? Sequential are really good, and they stand by this stuff. And I'm hoping that with the Focusrite badge above them, that they continue to do that. But they've always been really good, and they exhaustively fix every single issue. Because again, my Pro 3 had a squeaky filter knob on it. And they sent me like a new part and all that kind of stuff for that as well. So they're really good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, hey, before we move any further, let's listen to about a minute of one of your latest videos here, just so people can get a background to where you're coming from. So let me pull this up here, and please let me know if there's not sound. I think it should be right though. Let's see.
Super simple, nothing crazy, right?
Yeah, one of the things I like about it is that it's one thing when you're listening to this kind of music and it's Michael Myers or somebody really scary on the screen, but listening to a composition that's well done, you're like, that is the scariest flower shop I've ever seen. It really says something about
it. That's right. That's totally why that's a great job, Dan, because it's just you've taken that scene and added this other layer and other potential meaning to it just by what you did. And it's the
vibe, right? It's capturing the vibe. It's like not necessarily replicating the sounds exactly, but it's just it's like a dark feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's providing the backstory, it's providing the not obvious from what you see in the visual. It's providing this other element the psychological element almost, that there's tension now, that didn't exist. If you took away what you did to that picture and just watch it, it's a car driving through the snow.
It's like the same with Jaws, right? If like you watch Jaws without the sound, it's just a camera moving through the water. There's nothing happening, right?
Right. So it's what you did was provide the subtext for that. So that's why it's very, very cool, and just it sounds great, man.
I feel inside myself that I did some better stuff with the Pro 3. I think because of the arpeggiator and just a couple of other things that thing's able to do, but I enjoy working with this Prophet 5 more, and I think even though it might take me a while, I think it's going to force me to get better. Let me put it that way. That was kind of just a multi-layer test with like one synth. So I feel like this thing's going to force me to get better just by working with this, with no arpeggiator, and I can already feel myself like, trying to learn more in terms of like literally playing the keyboard and like trying to learn more songs, learn more scales, learn more chords and stuff like that. Not that it showed in that video particularly, but like when I'm playing by myself, I'm running through scales and doing lots of chords, and it sounds fantastic, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many layers to like how to get that sound that you're looking for, I think there's a lot of times like people head towards a very technical, either through the notes that they're playing, music theory, like, hey, I'm going to be doing it in this mode, and these substitutions, all that kind of stuff, and that's one way to get to a particular flavor of the sound. Also in the sound design, like, oh, I'm doing these kind of sounds and I'm modulating this and this and this, and you're getting to a very technical place that could sound cool or it could just sound technical. But to me, like, one of the things that makes music really interesting is what you talked about, is that texture. What is the vibe of it? How does it move you? Because I'm not thinking about, well, gosh, when he added both the envelope and the LFO to the filter, that really did it for me. Like, not generally,
Yeah, exactly. To that point, there's a video that I showed it to you before, but there's a video where Alan Howarth, who did like Halloween, he was John Carpenter's synth guy for a while, and we'll talk about him in a second,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a video where he's pressing one key on a Prophet 5 and he's working the filter and he's changing settings, and he's kind of talking to this guy next to him, and he said, it's amazing what you can just get out of one note, and you'd think, one note, what can you get out of that, right? But it's not about the music, it's about the texture, it's about the vibe, and the Prophet 5 was the synth that covered all those soundtracks when I grew up. I mean, I've got a little list here, but I mean, everything from Escape from New York, we talked about Creepshow recently, like Halloween 2, Halloween 3, maybe Prophet 10 on a couple of those, but to me, they're the same synthesizer. The sound is the same, right? But it covered so many of those soundtracks that to have the thing here is... those kind of sounds like fall out of this machine. I remember Jamie on Geosynths talking about it, saying it was all these sounds of music, like groups and things like that he enjoyed were falling out of it. But I don't know those things. So for me, John Carpenter sounds like fall out of the Prophet 5. They just find them as you're going through, right? Because, I mean, Halloween 2 is my absolute favorite synth soundtrack ever. I think it's like the greatest soundtrack that's ever been made. And really, it's just a weird overdub of Alan Howarth going over John Carpenter's original piano music, right, with this gothic synth tones and stuff. But the thing just sounds phenomenal, and to me, it really stands up. So, yeah, I just love going through and finding those sounds in this thing. It really does it for me. I could do it for hours.
I wonder, like, that's something that I've thought about a lot too, with guitars as well. Is how an artist is it where it's a chicken or the egg? Is it because the Prophet sound the way that it did that it moved John Carpenter to make those sounds and we just associate them together, or did John Carpenter have a very particular application and it happened so early in the life of the synthesizer that everybody just associates that together? Like Jimmy Page and the Les Paul, or Jimi Hendrix and the Stratocaster would be, similar kind of thing. Like, why is that? Do you guys, like, when you play instruments, so obviously you do, Dan, but Tim Marshall also, like, do you find when you pick up a certain instrument that you tend to play a little more in the style of, something that was monumental to you as you were, growing in your music ability?
Absolutely. If I can jump in there. Absolutely, and especially with drums. So let's say that there's tunings on a drum kit, and one of them's tuned open, and the heads are tensioned up, so the tuning's kind of high. So it's very singy, kind of ringy, singy. I'm going to immediately start to play. That's going to elicit a response, right? So if I'm answering your question right, Cryss.
Yeah.
I absolutely respond to what the instrument is doing, and and if the drums are tuned up high like that, it's going to tend to make me think 60s, in some way, or jazz, like straight ahead jazz kind of thing. It's going to elicit that response from me, and so I think every instrument, at least for me, I try to be reactive with the sound, and thereby the sound kind of is part of what's dictating the music I'm just about to create.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious, like, so on the converse, like when you come to a set and it's down tuned, what do you feel like playing at that point? Is it like big, like John Bonham rolls or something, or what's the thing that it brings out of you?
Then it's like the 70s to me. Like everything's dead. Then it's like the end Ringo of the Beatles, and then it's like everybody playing dead, taped up drums that are thuddy and low, and so those don't articulate. You can't play super fast things and make them articulated on that because they're sluggish to respond, and they're thuddy and they're just dead. There's no the release time is turned way down. And so yeah, I kind of just want to like play like funky grooves at that point, just boom, boom, that's what I'm hearing as soon as I sit at a kit that's all down tuned like that, rather than something that would be extremely busy and articulated, because you're not gonna get that really out of it. It just makes you play different.
Yeah, I know. I've very much felt like that with guitars. Maybe not as much with synthesizers, but with guitars or bass. Like if I pick up my Mustang bass, which is short scale, so it has a whole different feel. Again, a string tension thing will be tuned to the same pitch as my Ricky or P bass or whatever, but it has kind of a floppiness that just immediately makes me think of like really groovy 60s type stuff, or some of those like trip hop type of bass lines, very like retro. Like I don't think of anything else on that bass other than those very retro sounds. But playing a Stingray or something is just a whole different experience, in that it feels a lot more modern and tighter and punchier. And yeah, I definitely feel like that can be also part of the making music process. Is like, you could get a part done with this synthesizer or that one, or this guitar or that one, but sometimes the way you interact with that instrument really pushes. Sometimes you choose it because it'll do a certain thing, or not so much it does a certain thing, but it will inspire in you to play a certain way versus another instrument. I don't know.
I think that definitely stands for big keyboards like this too. That really translates for me. Like, well, again, back to this Prophet, the space between the knobs and everything is just the whole experience of using the architecture is really really drives how you use it. Now, you just mentioned something about associating like a particular vibe with like a John Carpenter or something like that. Funny thing about John Carpenter back in those days, he didn't own any synthesizers at all. He was just a movie director. He would have a synth programmer every time. So he worked with Dan Wyman from USC on his first couple of films, and then he worked with Alan Howarth on everything from Escape from New York, Halloween 2, Halloween 3, They Live, Christine, and I think that Big Trouble in Little China as well. But Alan Howarth owned all the synths, right? He owned the Prophet 5. He was the guy that that did the original Star Trek warp speed. You know, the Enterprises, when it jumps to warp speed, that's done on the Polymod, on the Prophet 5, right? He was one of the first Prophet 5 owners, and he dialed that sound up and took that in there and got himself that gig on Star Trek. And I think he was the Star Trek sound effects guy, like from there on out, right? Through the whole series of movies.
For the films.
Yeah, for the films, yeah. So he was to me, I always thought I grew up loving John Carpenter music, but I kind of realize now that I actually like Alan Howarth music.
It's interesting how that works out.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because when Halloween 4 came out and he did the score by himself, when I was young, I looked at the album cover and went, oh, Alan Howarth, what? Where's John Carpenter? Now,
yeah, you never know.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that Halloween 2 soundtrack is so classic, so classically creepy. It's everything that you know, almost cliche would think about. Like they defined it so heavy. They defined it hard.
The sound scares me. It does, and it's all in that polymod there on the Prophet 5. All that stuff is, even those, you know, like stingers in movies where there's like a kind of a sound effect that's designed to sit with a jump scare or emphasize a particular moment. Like Alan made all those stingers, and I can remember seeing an interview with him where he said, I just kind of created this bag of stingers and gave it to John Carpenter, and they kind of like added it at relevant points in the movies, and you can hear them all over Escape from New York and things like that too. Like there'll be like Snake Plissken's in the foreground, and somebody will run across the background, and you'll hear the polymod like go and do this kind of ping type noise, and it just really emphasizes it. It creates a vibe. It creates the just the whole texture of the movie just works because of it. Sound really emphasizes a film. It really changes a film too. You get the wrong soundtrack, it just doesn't work.
Those parts are interesting because they're the kind of things that you wouldn't normally think to do in a song. You know, some sort of sound effect or creative sound design, and that it's kind of odd, and like when you hear it done right, it's like, wow, this is really interesting. I've heard there was a sci-fi show that I don't know, we watched a year or two ago, and one of their motifs that happened regularly was that I don't remember if it was like a South American sci-fi show. It was overdubbed, but the cool thing is that one of the motifs was it was just a resonant filter, and they were just sweeping through the harmonics, but in a slow way with reverb and stuff. And it was just set way back into the sound so that while things were happening and maybe there was a pause after something was revealed or whatever it was, and then there would be this like, you know, the sweep of through the harmonic spectrum. And it worked oddly because it was one musical sounding, like, you know, there you hear notes and changing and you know where the filter is sweeping through these pitches, but at the same time, so it had a certain beauty to it, but at the same time it was not sweeping through a normal Western musical scale. It was sweeping through a series of harmonics, so it had a certain bit of like mystery, and while being beautiful is almost like slightly agitating too, in terms of what it brought to the show that was put to.
I love that. I love the self-oscillating filter on the P5 when you take it up into the high resonance, and you can really tap into some. Although it's high pitched, it's got such a dark, haunting quality about it, and you'll hear that all over Halloween 2 as well. It's all over that soundtrack. That high self-resonating filter, right?
Yeah, you know, Heathcliff just said the best sci-fi sound effects are on vintage Doctor Who, and yeah, man, all that stuff on there is really crazy, and they used a number of different synthesizers through the years. I think like the VCS3, and at a later point, a lot of the music was made on a CS80. But originally, of course, a lot of tape loops being manipulated in the original theme. And again, it's one of those things where they tended to make use of the stuff that they have. So, making use of that ring modulator and all that kind of stuff.
The BBC had a department called the Radiophonic Workshop, which was where I think Delia Derbyshire was in there working, and they used to do it. There was a hell of a lot of synth stuff on like BBC TV shows and things like that as I grew up. So things like Doctor Who. I mean, I grew up in the UK, right? So Doctor Who was a big deal. I remember. I don't think I knew the first two Doctors, but it was Tom Baker when I kind of came along with the Creature from the Pit, Daleks, Cybermen, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. There's a bunch of videos about that on YouTube too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they've got it where the I don't remember the fellow's name, but the guy that did it may have been the Tom Baker years or the Peter Davison, but he was showing how he made it on the CS80. And that was a great one. Of course, they've got some older ones talking about like the tape loops, which are fascinating.
That used to scare me. The opening to Doctor Who. I mean, it's just that weird circular kind of. It's almost like going down a tornado, isn't it, or something? But that sound combined with that visual used to scare me as a kid.
Yeah.
It was quite scary stuff.
It's kind of the sound of ghosts, right? In a way, like you think about a theremin and how that has that sort of embraces that same quality, ooh, and then everyone like imitates that just as like a matter of course of like, that's scary, it's spooky, ooh, that's like, it's a theremin, it's like, it's so part of that derivation of how that became the thing, how that became the sound that everybody associates with it. So it's funny to me, like it's the thing. Somehow.
I mean, I kind of play with my Pro 3 like that as well, because when I didn't used to know scales very well, I would hold one key down and I would literally move the pitch wheel and like just get the pitch wheel to the tone that I would want from it, and lots of reverb, and you can kind of ride the pitch wheel up and down with like how you want the whole sort of the sense of the piece to go. So rather than a melody, when I didn't know what to do, I would use the pitch wheel. I would just hit a note and just play with that pitch, right?
Well, it's not.
That's the reason why there should always be a pitch wheel.
There it is.
And not a stupid pitch strip. Okay.
I thought you liked the DX7 though. What are you talking about?
Wait. I got it.
Getting ready to trigger.
Judges say.
Oh.
But you're right.
It's amazing.
It's got to be in the right place too. Like when they put the pitch wheel like above the keyboard too, it's like, what?
And that is kind of weird because the Dave Smith synths kind of do that, right? Like my Prophet 08 is that way, where the pitch and mod wheel. At least they have the wheels, okay, so A+.
Yeah.
But they're kind of above the key bed, which makes it kind of weird sometimes when you're trying to get up there and do stuff while you're
I
holding.
think the Rev 2's like that as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think so.
But I tell you what was really nice was on the Pro 3, you had the pitch and the mod wheel, but there was also like a touch sensor next to it that you could assign to whatever you wanted. So quite often I would assign that to like oscillator 3 by itself, and at the end of a note you could just kind of push up on the slider and get like that oscillator to raise above everything else, and that was a super cool effect. I really enjoyed that. But again, with that Pro 3, you can put that all over the place. That thing is a crazy synth. I really think it's the best mono synth around for me. I mean, I'd had a Pro 2 as well, but the Pro 3 ate that for breakfast for me.
Yeah, I'm so wanting a Pro 3, but I have to tell myself don't do it, because I don't feel that I'm beating myself already because I'm not fully utilizing everything that I have. But there's something that I know about that synth that is probably just amazing. I can just tell from the little demos that I've seen of it, and I've heard the sequencer is super bad and inspiring, and I'm just like,
it's great.
I want it, but I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I have to stop myself and make some music, I
kind of had that same vibe going on with the Waldorf Quantum.
Yeah.
I remember they were showing that off for a couple years at the big shows, and when it finally came out, I was like, even though I know kind of some of the demos are a little bit iffy, like I knew there was something special about that synth. So when I got it, I haven't been disappointed at all with that one.
Yeah, that Pro 3 was a deep synth. I really like the look of that Iridium too. I've seen a couple of cinematic videos where some dudes like created a bunch of cinematic patches. I think it's even called like Cinematic Iridium or whatever. There's like 3
I think I've seen that too. Yeah.
Wow, that thing sounds amazing there. But I just don't know if I've got the patience and the time to spend finding all that stuff because of the depth. It's like, it's the same with the Pro 3. I had like 30 mod slots in it or something. It's like, Christ, like I'm like 10 deep. Like, what else am I going to do? Like another 20 mods.
It's like, who's really going to use
It's a lot,
that,
right? It's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's good. I mean, that Pro 3 is the BBC Radiophonic Workshop in a box. I mean, it's something else. But I'm going to grab one at some point when I've got some money again. I've lost my job last year, right? And I've just been kind of trying to build my photography business get going on that sort of stuff. So I just don't have the synth money at the minute. But a Pro 3 is going to be the reward at some point. Maybe my 50th.
Yeah, there you go. Justification right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're. Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
You're smart to appreciate the moment, though, that you have right now, so that you're just pulled back and really fully exploring one synth, because there's so much to be said for that. You can really get to know something and find your own voice in it. You can really. It becomes an intimate relationship, and you're not, bopping around. You're just dealing with this one thing, and man, you can get so deep into it and understanding it, and then you get the most out of it. It's so gratifying, I think, said the guy who's got like a number of synths behind him, because I have been that person where there was just the one synth that I was doing, and it's like, it's cool. Like that moment is really great. So I'm glad that you kind of recognize that, and that you're, happy and just parking right there and just enjoying learning the one synth just sort of backwards and forwards.
I mean, if the cash was there, I'd probably pick up the Pro 3 today, right? And I can do the same. But I'm not going to do the same thing to myself where I get like, 7, 8, 9 synths and then start. I mean, I can't spend 2 hours a day with 7 synths. I mean, who can?
Right.
It's 14 hours.
Right. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So
to master it.
I mean, I love all the synths like you guys do. I love all that stuff, and I would like 25 in a room. But I know that they would be toys that I enjoy playing with. Again, it's like being super rich and having 15 Ferraris in the garage and 5 islands, right? It's like I said to Chris the other day. The problem with that is then you've got to drive 15 Ferraris and you've got to try and go to 5 islands. Like, how much time have you got in life? I struggle with 2.
Right.
I think finding balance in all of these things is really a key thing. In that when you're thinking about, okay, well, I've got this synthesizer or this guitar, and you're thinking about, I want to add one. Like, you're feeling like, I want to have another one. Is to find the thing that's going to be complementary. So I think I see too many people, and I've certainly been guilty of it, that you buy something and then you buy something else that's very similar to the thing that you already have. So I mean, you've got a Prophet 5 and you also buy a Prophet 6. Like, well, that's not the most versatile combination. They're both fantastic synthesizers, but either one of those would pair much better with, say an Iridium or an OBX8 or something, or something that's a bit different, that gives you a different flavor. And then, at that point, like, you can kind of double up on stuff. So say, for instance, like with one of the things that I really liked about guitar equipment is that there's not a lot of relearning to do. It's like, I have I've got a Gretsch up there and I pick up the Telly, it's like, it's not a world different. There's not too much adjustment to be made compared to synthesizers. but in some respects you can find things that work very similarly and you're not having to relearn everything. So going from a Prophet 5 to an Iridium is just a completely different world, very complementary in sound, but in workflow way different, and you got to learn a new set of skills. But if you go from a Prophet 5 to say an OBX8 or OB6 or something, like you pretty much got it down. Like, you know what it does. Some of the knobs might be in a little bit different place, but you kind of got the idea of it already, which kind of cuts down that time of like, how do I need to keep up on all these different things? Like, no, these couple things sound different, but I'm not having to invest much time in keeping those skills up.
Well, and that's one of the things, right? Like, if you have, like, I ran into this going through my live rig, and I pulled out my Korg Radius, which I probably hadn't touched in, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And I completely forgot how to use a lot of the features on there and had to relearn all that stuff again, you know?
Yeah. It's like an Octatrack. You guys ever played with an Octatrack?
No. I've heard about the workflow on those, though. It can be a little bit of a bear.
Yeah, I went through a little Electron phase where I had like a Digitact and a Digitone, and again, bought too much stuff, bought an Octatrack, and then something else as well. I forget what it was, but that Octatrack is a pain in the ass. It really is. It's like, if you leave it for a few days, you go back to it and you're like, how do you set that up again? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
You're watching freaking Cuckoo's video or something like that to try and figure it out again, right? It's a convoluted machine. It's not that the concepts are hard, but it's just like, why is it implemented like that? It's so backwards and bizarre. Yeah, don't buy one ever. Seriously, don't buy one.
Duly noted, sir.
Yeah. I don't think I was ever in danger, but I will still heed that advice.
I'll tell you what, though, something like the Digitact is a fun device. That's a really fun device. It's simple, it's clean, it's a great drum machine. You know, you can sample all the samples. It's mono, right? But yeah, that's a fun tool. I liked that, and that's why everybody buys that and thinks that the Octatrack is a great upgrade. But it's 10 years older, right? So it's not.
And the thing is, like, you got to find what works for you. So, like, those little boxes where I'm having to scroll through buttons and I've got a 1 centimeter screen and trying to figure all that stuff. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. But whereas a lot of people have problems, like, I don't want to use a trackpad to move knobs on a screen. Like, that doesn't bother me at all because I can see everything. I can see exactly what's all going on, and that's a workflow that fits me, but that would be absolutely horrible for somebody else that would probably be into the, Octatrack or whatever.
I don't like samples that much, to be honest with you. I don't like looking through like lists of samples because, I don't know, after you've listened to like 10, 20 kick drums, I'm like, I don't even know what sounds good, to be honest.
Like make this drum actually sound.
Yeah, it's like, am I going to like put this one on and then everyone says, what did you choose that shit kick for? So yeah, like having a bank full of samples is not, it doesn't work for me. I don't like it.
Well, I mean, it's nice to be in a studio where you have people working for you that can anticipate things for you. You're like, well, this, I don't know, was it like John Bonham? I think maybe used to say stuff like this. And I'm just making stuff up here, but it'd be like, it's much too frungy. Make it more sprungly or something, and like nonsense. But like when you have that working relationship and language, like people are like, oh, okay. So you're not having to scroll through a bunch of crap. Like, oh, you want the bigger kick drum with this kind of wood and not the other one. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, samples and drums are a real tough one for me. Sometimes I don't know what sounds good, or I don't know what kit to use. I don't know, I was trying to make some synthwavy stuff today, and I was like, what drum kit am I going to use? Like, I ended up with a 707 or something like that, but I didn't know what to use, really, to be honest.
Yeah, that's something that I've struggled with too, like trying to emulate certain styles. You almost have to like go back and try and figure out what hardware they used for whatever that style is. Mm-hmm. And that'll get you pretty close most of the time.
I've kind of realized though that I really like the 808 because that was the sound of house, right? The 808 was what was it? Yeah, the 909's techno, right? The 808 is house, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that 808 sound with those old 80s piano, the piano chords and stuff like that, that really does it for me. That early 80s or late 80s house music is just sounds really good. Simple but good.
It's also helpful to know, like, if you have an idea about what you're about to create, if you sort of have an idea and you're not just like out there searching, but if you sort of have an idea of where you're headed, a little bit of a compass, then you can certainly go, all right, I either want a big kick drum or maybe I want a small one. You know, and there are little things and little ways to go about looking for it. And then also the bass sound, it's so important to, if you have a giant, long, sustained kick drum sound and a big, long bass sound, you know, you're setting yourself up for problems, you know, for failure in a way. So it's like cool to think about if you do know what your bass sound is already or something, then you can at least kind of put them off of each other and, you know, have a shorter kick sound. Maybe it's not as deep. Maybe it's more about the attack. And at least that's the way I go about it, is I start immediately thinking how that pairs up with the bass, like the kick and the bass for sure, and then how those elements are going to play off of each other. I mean, it's kind of one of the reasons I guess people started doing the side chaining thing and gating the bass when the kick would hit, because it just makes room. Yeah,
it makes room. And then another technique that I'll use with some of that, since I do a lot of dance music, is I'll tune the kick to the bass, to the root bass note, right? So that, because if your kick is tuned a little like differently, it can sound weird, I think. So being able to kind of tune that can help set it in as well.
One of the things that probably would help out the music community too is just to not be so worried about a lot of this stuff, because I think it's very interesting and I like getting into, you know, the weeds on that stuff, but at the same time I think it creates a perception where a lot of people, it takes away their confidence in to put music out because they're worried that they have no idea how a sidechain works or something. They're like, I don't know if I'm going to do this right or if I have the right kick sample and any of this, and they get worried and they don't make the music. Where I think some of that perception comes from a lot of the YouTubers that are like, well, here's the super secret way, and if you do it with this and this plugin or whatever, then you're going to get exactly the kind of kick that you want by stacking 8 snare samples or whatever it is. And it becomes a little bit intimidating for people. And the reality check, I think, is really to actually go and watch some of the people that make hit records. Or at least the older guys. I haven't really seen this so much in the younger guys, but with the older guys, like, I mean, I was watching, man, I can't remember the guy's name. I can't remember the guy's name right now, but one of the famous, like, particularly 90s alternative rock producers, and he was showing around his studio and his rack of like super cool vintage compressors, like. Got all these, like, you know, LA2A and 1176 and, you know, on a distressors and, you know, on and on and on. And the guy was talking to him about, well, how's it, you know, are you, you know, it was implying like, well, do you take the BPM of the music, convert it into milliseconds, and then set up the attack and the release of the compressor to match the tempo and all this kind of stuff, which is a legit thing to do. And the guy was just kind of looked back at him. And again, this is like a, you know, platinum record producer is like, it turned the knobs until they sound good.
Right.
and really,
I mean, that's job one. Make it sound good.
Yeah.
You have one job as a music creator. Make it sound good.
But there are people that get really into those technicals like that. Certain areas I do that a little bit, but not to that.
Yeah.
I'm not that.
Yeah. That's a little forest for the trees for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why hardware is cool, though, right? Because you can turn the knobs and you can find stuff. You can enjoy finding, and, you know, you don't. Again, to your point there about putting music out as well, that's the reason I didn't start doing anything that I do under the name Dan or whatever. I just chose that Sonic Neutronic name because it allowed me originally to be completely anonymous and just to have the kind of the balls to like make something, even if it's crap, just put it out there because it doesn't matter. It goes under Sonic Neutronic, right? Like, who's that? Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. Totally. Well, so speaking of kind of these qualities, Marshall, you did a remake of a song that we could possibly listen to, and I'd love to. We each kind of have a little thing that we could hear. I'd love to play before time gets away from us, and
awesome.
Just under the topic of horror music and whatnot. So anything related. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
This is cool. This is so cool. So can we describe it for a second?
Oh yeah.
Marshall, describe it for a second.
Yeah, so this is my cover, basically. I called it a remix. I guess it's technically a cover because I didn't really change the composition too much. But of the Techno Syndrome theme song from Mortal Kombat from the mid-'90s. And it took me about a month to make this.
Oh, wow.
The hardest part that I had was trying to find that scream sample where the guy yells, Mortal Kombat, right? So the other stuff I pulled from I downloaded or I purchased a copy of the original game from GOG.com, goodoldgames.com. And within that download, I was able to pull out the individual samples from the game and recreate how they used in the actual track.
Oh, nice.
So
that's great.
It was a lot of fun to make this, and I think it turned out really, really good.
Okay, I'll play a few segments from this, beginning, middle, and end, and let me back it up here.
Test your might. Test your might. Test your might. Test your might.
Haha!
I'll take you back.
Oh, dude, that's so great.
Thanks.
I love those low bitrate voices as well. They sound really good, right? They sound like Amiga.
Those are the samples from the game. So, yeah, and I had to sequence all that stuff, and I remember listening over and over to the original to try and get those lined up correctly. And
wow.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Wow, that's amazing.
That the samples are really a rhythmic element in the song, and the timing of them. Like, you would think, like, oh, I can just add a sample in here, but where it comes in, where that attack of the whatever they're saying comes in, is really an important part that helps kind of keep the groove going. And that's an art in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the idea for this was I wanted to see if I could recreate that song with modern equipment, and I did. I think it turned out really good.
What did you use on that as well, apart from the samples?
Oh, I used a bunch of stuff. I'd have to look at it because I think I put the list of hardware in there in the description.
Sounds like it kind of sounds like an Amiga, doesn't it? That those voices sound a bit Amiga. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Amiga. There was tons of sound sampling back on the Amiga. I think it's like 12-bit or something like that. But it just sounded really good. It's got that kind of crunchy quality to the voices.
So yeah, I used a Slim Fatty AN1X, the Matrix Brute, a couple of boutiques for the drums like the TR-09, TR-08, and then I used some software synthesizers like Kick 2 for the kick drum. That since we're just talking about kicks, Analog Noise Attack. That's the name of the synth. Of course, Omnisphere 2. And some Rolling Cloud stuff, the Juno 106, System 8, and I think I used a sound canvas in there too. I think I left that off of here. But yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's killing, man. That's amazing.
Thanks,
and I'm sure, like, you learned a lot. You took away a lot from that, I'm sure.
Yeah, and, we were talking, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, about sometimes doing work like that, where you're trying to recreate something that's somebody else has done. You learn a lot about production and certain ways things were done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that can be a useful tool in kind of gaining knowledge. Well, let's take a listen to Tim's track here. So tell us a little bit about this one, which is from the Getaway.
Yeah, I had the chance to do the entire score for a film, including the opening credits. That was a horror film. It was an inexpensively made horror film that was in association with actually a small college in Virginia. But I made some phone calls and miraculously I requested that I'd like to do a film score. I really wanted to try my hand at this, and miraculously this fell into my lap. And so it's my first time to ever do a full-length film score, including this opening credit bit here. So the whole thing's a minute and 41 seconds, so it's not very long, but it's very much all of the analog synths I have here and a number of plugins that I used, which we can discuss if anyone's curious after we hear it. So, but yeah, it's basically, I just got this and it was without sound, and so I did try to match up some hits here and there, which you may see or whatever. But yeah, we can give it a listen. I think that volume could probably come up if it's possible.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't look like very much clay.
Oh, it's enough. Put this around your neck.
There
was that one spot in there where it was obviously you had done that where so some came off on the bottom left of the screen and then some more of the credits came up, but it shifted and the way that you transitioned that, it like everything kind of dropped and you had just like a, I don't know, descending bass note or something, and it just felt perfect for that transition. That was really quite clever. Yeah,
it was fun to. So I did mark certain hits. you don't want to like hit everything because then it wears that notion out. You know what I mean? Like if you hit everything, then it's like hit. Right, we get it. But like you pick some major ones that you think are like cool, and then but that was one of them. Yeah, when they were focused on the girl and the camera kind of sweeps over. So I just kind of put the whole mix through a turntable plug-in, and then just hit the spin down on it.
Yeah,
it just felt like
that was it.
yeah. So everything just kind of goes dang, and then it's back in. But I kept it in time.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like a bar, like you're bending a pitch wheel or anything on a synth. It had a definitely like
yeah, there's a Abbey Road turntable plug-in, and so I just put the whole mix through it and slid it down. I think I might have added a bass drop too or something just to give it more of a performance feel. But yeah, it just felt like when the camera moved, like time sort of kind of moved. So I thought maybe the whole thing just goes, So yeah, that's how that happened.
So I left you a comment on there like 2 years ago, and you just liked it today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken, for getting around to like it.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Because I saw it and I went. It was the only comment that's on there that I haven't addressed, and because I do try to address every comment that comes across, but yours was obviously missing, and it was so funny because it's like, and you'll be on the show. So I'm glad you brought it up because. YouTube doesn't always tell me when I get a new comment.
Yeah.
Do you guys have that on your YouTube channel at all? Where sometimes, and so I don't. If I don't catch it in the initial batch or whatever, sometimes they don't tell you. So I went back and I would just happen to be looking, and I was like, well, I'm definitely gonna love this comment, and he's on the show tonight. So yeah, that's exactly how that happened. It never even came across my desk,
Well, that's it. It like pinged, and it was like Tim Grogan loves your comment. Like, what?
2 years ago, I saw that. Thank you so much for stopping by, and 2 years later, I still appreciate your comment.
I'm like, bastard, I should have deleted that yesterday. You left me in the dark for 2 years, dude.
I know. God, he just has me out dangling.
Yeah, exactly.
If Dan were on Facebook, he would unfriend you now.
Right. Well, perhaps I would deserve it. But yeah, I never even knew about the comment, and it was just so ironic that because today you were on the show, I went back and looked at that. We talked about maybe we could provide any sort of similar, topic-related videos or music or whatever that we have, and there it was. It was just right there on the top. And I looked, I was like, I've never responded to that.
Oh, I'm going to leave it 2 years and write you're welcome.
You should. You should do that.
I will.
You should do that. I dare you.
I'll remember. Time flies. Flies.
Yes, I know.
Can you imagine somebody checking out the video and it's like a comment, 2 years later, then another comment 2 years later after that.
Yeah. I could be so lucky as to get comments 2 years later,
Yeah, too true. I've got like 600 subscribers after 5 years on YouTube. It's not exactly thriving.
It's hard, and you have to feed it all the time, and that's always the thing about content versus like what you're really trying to do, and you're having to split your time between creating content and then actually creating the shit that you think is great that the content supports. 100%. And that's a whole other episode for us.
There's a point about that. I took a break from sort of all the synth channels for about the last 18 months because, well, various reasons. One, I didn't know why I was doing it. I didn't know why I was like trying to make video. I didn't know if I was making videos or if I was making music. I'm like, what am I doing here? And why am I doing it? What, to get like 12 comments or whatever it is. So, and then that, and without going too deep into it, there's some bizarre toxicity around the whole sort of, some of the synth channels and some of the people on synth channels were driving me crazy and stuff. And I just kind of pulled back from it all. But now that I've come back to it, I don't care as much. I don't seek the likes. I don't worry about what it is. I don't worry about how many subscribers. Whereas before, that stuff on my first run was really driving me crazy, actually. And I think I kind of put some things out that I really liked or something like that, and it didn't do very well. And I guess I got kind of pissed off inside myself and kind of went, why do it then? What's the point? But then you got to understand what you're doing and why and for who. And I think it's always kind of for yourself first. Like, make stuff for yourself first that you really enjoy, and the audience will come. You'll find your audience through that shared taste. Like, people, you know, I get a small amount of people that kind of like the vibe of the stuff that I do, and it's not necessarily thousands, but it's enough. It's just it feels decent, right?
Yeah, that is one of the nice things about YouTube, because the algorithm will go out and try and find people that they think want to watch your content. So
and it's nice when somebody pops up like and says, "Oh, dude, you've really sold me on a Prophet 5." That kind of makes me happy when people say, "All I'd heard on it was, you know, like traditional music or these kind of vibes and things, and you've showed me that it can do that dark side and things like that." So I kind of like that. That feels good. If you know, a couple of people say you've sold them a synth, I think you kind of hit something, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's just so, you know, content is content, and then your art is your art, and they're different things, and people can tell, I think, in a heartbeat, instinctually, you know, that you're either doing something from the heart or something that's really like something that you love that comes across in your work, compared to if you're just like putting something out because you think that's going to get you more hits or whatever, you know, more likes.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I don't think that you can fool people for too terribly long. They get that. It's just obvious. I mean, so I've always just tried to do whatever I do. It's not really any particular genre. I don't even know what it is I do, except for it's expression for me, and it's the way I hear music. And so I try to make music the way I hear it, you know, and I think that's the most important thing. And then, because then you're doing this is sort of like our last week's show, or whatever, but you're doing your best work at that point. The one we had with Ben Jackson on it, we were talking about that. But that is true. And so right, exactly, you're right about that. Like, just to make music that you think is the kind of music you want to hear, or what's your best music, you know. Do your best job. Don't do it for the likes. Don't try to do that.
Well, that's
a
thing,
game
like,
that's ridiculous, you know.
I always hear people say, like, you know, they'll see some YouTube demos on some stuff, and they're like, why don't these guys ever actually make something with it? And then when you do, like, nobody watches that. So
Yeah.
That's
true. Totally true. People want to watch videos about synths rather than the music made with the damn thing, right?
Yes. And so you just have to strap in for that reality. Don't take it personally. It's not just you. It's everybody. Nobody wants to hear that stuff. They don't want to hear what you're doing.
If you can remove a layer of pressure around yourself too, like, I know that I'm not going to be a composer. I know I'm not going to make money with this stuff. So all of that's gone for me. It's not even a desire to become anything around music. It's not going to happen. So I can really just forget about all of that and just focus on making stuff that I really enjoy. And, you know, hopefully over time get a couple of thousand people maybe that enjoy. Well, I say a couple of thousand, as if a couple of thousand watch your videos. I mean, that's it's not reality even when you've got a few thousand people, is it? So, but yeah, if I can get a small audience that actually enjoys what I do, that's enough, I think.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Very, very much agreed on all that.
Well, Cryss, as we're winding down, you've got something that you can play. We want to hear.
Yeah.
So this is related to our conversation today. So I don't even know what year I did this. 2020.
Well, let me go comment.
What's that?
I'm going to go comment.
3 years later.
I love it. Yep.
Well, there is a comment on here from you, I'm pretty sure, because I think when I put the video out, it had one. So let's find out what nice thing you said about it before.
I did.
See, there's Arlo. Okay, there it is. There it is. I need to go and respond to this now again after 2 years.
The Tim Grogan method of how not to grow your audience.
So the idea behind this, it served a few different purposes. So in 2020, I put out a sound set for the Prophet 6, and I did the boring play the patches video, so just people can hear how it says it, sounded, and it's not music. It's just like you hitting some chords and stuff, and it's boring. But I felt like, every time I release a sound set, I make a song with those sounds so that people can kind of hear in context. It might not be their thing at all, because the sound set covered 80s synth pop and 70s stuff and some more darker horror type stuff. And so this actually came about after some conversations with Dan and watching his channel and what he was doing. And it was after some point where he got me listening to some of the old horror soundtracks that I hadn't heard. And so I thought, I'm just going to make this kind of horror-esque thing. And I didn't have a horror movie to make it to, or any sort of film. Nobody's beating down my door to give me films to score, which is all right. But I made this video from random samples of video and tried to make it has a very loose story to it, and it kind of has a positive vibe, like a hero's journey kind of thing to it. But it's got 8 different sections that are all kind of really radically different. So I'll just play you a few of them. Yeah, so all those sounds were, except for the guitar, bass, and drums, just guitars and drums, I think, were all Prophet stuff on there, all sound effects and all that.
And some really good texture in there, man.
Really awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
and
Actually,
and
I've got
that
a question.
Yeah.
So you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but how many sales did you make on a Prophet 6 sound bank?
I was my best-selling one, but I mean, it's not like I. So my problem is I make the sounds that I like, kind of what you were talking about before. Like, please yourself if it's good, if you're happy with it, if you're proud of it, put it out there, and if somebody else wants to join them too. I don't have to support myself from this, so
Right.
I don't just have to like churn them out. But I also, again, it kind of goes against my, because it's kind of connected with my art, I'm not really willing to do a ton of spamming it up. If I did, I'll post it a couple places, Facebook and maybe on the Gear page or something, or Gear Space. But I don't really go aggressive with that stuff. So
Right.
I'm sure a lot of other people are doing a lot more sales. I'm just making myself happy, and if somebody else wants to use the sounds, then I'm happy for them, and it'll bring a few bucks for gear in.
Right. Because I always wonder when people make sound banks how well, like Jamie does tons of that stuff, right? And manages to buy a decent synth and all that. And I always wonder. I mean, obviously he's not going to give you the numbers and stuff, but I do wonder how well those banks sell.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's willing to do the marketing of them and put them out there, then they'll do really well. So there are some people doing quite well. Jamie, some of the bigger sound designers like Luftdrum and I don't know who else, but there are some guys that are doing really well with it. But I think you got to be willing to do all that other stuff, and so yeah. So like people, had people ask me like, should I get into this? I'm looking like. When I started it, like there weren't that many people doing it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is be something that's a side project that's fun." And then, by a year and a half or 2 years in, like it was so super saturated that it's like, unless you're really intent on making money and are going to just piss people off with spamming everywhere, or at least until you get established. Then you're not going to do so well on that. And there's 99% of the sound sets out there are just they sound like crap because it's people that don't really give a damn. They're just trying to make money. But the people that do give a damn and that do make some really nice sounds, I mean they're and it catches on. Then they're good. One of our buddies in the chat that was here was James Dyson. He's a great sound designer. Of course, Jamie does sound design, so there's some good ones out there.
Oh, for sure, yeah. It always, people have asked me a couple of times for some of my sounds, and I'm like, dude, it's just, I don't know. The synth is so simple; it doesn't feel right to sell stuff from it. I don't get it. But this one,
I mean, it's the same thing as selling your music. I mean, it's almost the same thing. It's your taste on display for someone to maybe purchase. Be it your music finished piece or even the sounds that you like. It's still coming from your aesthetic. So I think you just do what you do. And Cryss, obviously that's kind of where you were coming from, was just like, I like creating sounds. As a byproduct, I could sell a few. Why not?
Yeah,
but it's not your thrust.
And obviously there's a market for that whole space, right? Sound design, because there are people who have this equipment, but either don't want to put the time to design their own stuff or whatever the reason. Maybe they're on a deadline, they need to pick something up. So,
I think that the sound design part of it shouldn't be the end game, in my opinion. I mean, people can do whatever makes them happy, but to me, at the end of the day, it's got to be about the song. And so there are a lot of people out there I won't use anybody else's sounds and all of this. I'm not going to copy anybody, and I'm not going to listen to anybody else's music ever. And that's not really how it's. I don't think that's the way to go about it. I don't think that's going to be the most going to give you the best results. And so for me, I can make any sound that I want, but there are times where I need some sounds that I don't already have programmed up. And so, if it's let's say for a super complicated synth that's, cold and digital or something, some area that maybe pigments could get into. Well, I've made half a dozen patches for that, but that's not been a synth that I've been focused on. It's something that I can go to. It's in the virtual closet that I can go and grab that stuff out and use it because I know what's in there. I've checked it out and I've used it. I know it's capable of, But at the time that I'm making a song, I don't want to spend a couple hours really making a fantastically good patch for it. When I know that there's a few sound designers out there that I like and that I might have some of their stuff, or it came with the synthesizer itself, that you can go and grab and get on the merry way of doing what I think is the higher calling, which is making really good music. So there are people like, I mean, obviously the four of us like making sounds, and we love doing that, and we love turning knobs and making it making the sounds ourselves. But I have friends that don't like doing that at all. They feel like it completely disconnects them from the music, and they just want to make the music. And I think that's a completely valid thing. And so where a lot of times I see online people, this is a synthesizer you can make your own sounds on. They don't want to. They don't care at all. They'll just, and if we look back, particularly when synthesizers started having presets in the late 70s and early 80s, I mean, so many of our favorite songs were made with these presets that were used by everybody, like, oh, it's that one Prophet brass sound, or it's the CS80 brass sound, or whatever, and they're ubiquitous. Or when time somebody grabs a Gibson Les Paul and plugs it into a Marshall Plexi, like, that's been done a billion times already. But there's a reason that it's been done that many times, because it's a classic sound. But when Billy Gibbons or Jimmy Page or Joe Bonamassa pick up the same kind of stuff, they all make different music. And that's kind of the way I feel about, like, I'm not worried that if I use a preset that I'm going to be sounding exactly like somebody else, because I bet you, somebody that's bought the sound set that I just showed, they might be making techno music with it, because there's some sounds in there that would work for it, and it might be completely different than what I'd ever make with it.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
To your point there as well, we've talked about Creepshow quite a lot recently, but if you go back and listen to Creepshow, that is literally an advertisement for the Prophet 5. It's all that original Prophet 5 sound bank that you get in the Bank 500 or whatever it is now. You can hear those sounds all over that soundtrack. So yeah, people back then were using the presets straight out of the synth, even in soundtracks, right?
Yeah.
It's all what you do with it. I mean, there's a few of those things that are become a little bit cliched, but digital native dance off of a D50 would be, I think, one of the biggest examples of like a very cliched sound, because it's so identified with a couple songs. And so with one of the last tracks I made, I'm like, screw it. I'm going to fit this in here. That became the challenge, and the kind of, tongue-in-cheek joke about, like, yeah, I don't care that it's such a cliched thing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be proud of it, and it's going to be hilarious, Sure. Well, our time has drawn to a close. If you're wondering why the heck we're stopping 39 minutes into the show, it's because we started an hour earlier, and we've tried to make everybody aware of it last week and this week, but should be the same time next week. So whatever time it comes on in your area, an hour earlier. But guys, any last comments? Tell us what's going on, Marshall. What's going on in for the next week? And
just wanted to say thanks to Dan for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to meet you after all this time, chatting with you in the chats and everything. So thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. In terms of what I got going on, it's the same. I'm like a broken record, I feel like. I'm working on the same stuff. So hopefully I'll have something new coming out here pretty soon.
That's what it takes to get it done, though. Like, sometimes you have to be the broken record.
Yep.
You got it. You just keep hammering, right? You know. That's awesome, man. And you're making great progress. What you're doing, I have such admiration for what you're accomplishing, man. It's going to be so bad, dude.
Yeah. These projects that you got coming up, man, they're going to be epic. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just seeing you out playing that rig live is going to be like, all right, there it is.
There it is.
Here's the payoff.
How about you, Tim?
I've got, kind of my normal stuff, just back to work after a week of actually having off, and I just made a long list today of things I need to get accomplished. But amongst those will be in the next couple months. I think they just finished the shooting of this new horror film that I get to score. So I am getting to do another one, and it's perfect to mention here. Yeah, it's going to be about a 10-minute short, so it's just a short. Nice. But that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to doing that. That's in my upcoming few months. Whenever they start to throw me some footage, I'll get to start goofing with that, and obviously we can talk about it at that point. But aside from that, I've just I have a number of things I'm trying to get done, and some projects to finish. Nothing really worth mentioning, but definitely that horror score is going to be fun to do. So we'll circle back to that when it's happening.
Awesome. Well, Dan, again, thank you so much for being on, and just had a blast talking with you last week, and we had a really great time, and then to just be able to hit the beginnings of this topic. Really, I think we'll have to have some more discussion on this topic and really get into some of the techniques used. All the four of us are using, and everybody in the chat, to see how we can even hit this a little bit harder. But what's up next for you, Dan?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's really fun to meet everybody. Again, like I said, feels like I know you guys all the time, but obviously you don't know me. So yeah, it's nice to kind of bridge that connection. So for me, I'm kind of trying to do for some reason I decided to try and start making like a little synth wavy type piece that's maybe trying to do a dark synthwave track. So if I get anything good out of it, I'll release that on my channel. But other than that, it's just going to be the usual kind of horror stuff with the Prophet 5 and trying to get some photography business in. It's tough, you send 100 emails and crickets. It's a killer.
It's true though. Yeah, Dan, seriously, thanks for being on here. It's been great to get to know more about what you do, and beyond just the chat room stuff, and so we really do appreciate you being on here, and very cool to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was fun. It goes quick, but it was fun.
Wagyu's complaining that we go too short, but gotta leave you wanting more, and you gotta have some time to go and actually use your music gear. But we hope to actually leave you wanting more. Let me pull this up here. So, man, this week, next week, completely awesome. We're going to follow it up. I mean, how do you follow up a week with Dan? But we're going to give it a go, because we're going to be having... Hey, why isn't this thing working?
Hey!
Come on,
hey!
Open it up. All right, trying it a different way. Whoa. Oh, no, that's... There, okay. Do I got it? Oh, what's happening? There it is.
Oh, look at him.
So... next Wednesday, again, an hour earlier than our previous time, but we'll be having Cy Alexander on here to talk about synthesizer. It'll be a show just dedicated talking about old synthesizers, new synthesizers, how things have been updated. We had been talking about this for a long time, and talking about things like the new OBX8. Or the new Prophet 5, as we've been talking about today. Like, how do these match up? And one of the problems is there's a lot of people talking about this stuff online that haven't really played any of it. As you can see from behind there, that is Cy's studio. That's a little bit of it. And there's all sorts of cool stuff in there, and he's one that can speak from experience. In fact, let me just pull up one other slide here to show you guys. So one of the things I want to do in the conversations I've had with Cy over the years, that it's like, well, how does this OBX8 match up with your OBX and things like that. So there's a little bit more of his studio, but we'll be looking forward to everybody's just go ahead, if you're watching this on catch up, just pause this right now and look down that beautiful hall of synthesizers. Yeah.
It is amazing.
So anyway, we're going to be totally geeking out next week about that. So join us, and before you leave, do all the stuff. If you're not subscribed, we'd love to have you subscribed and hit the like button. And we're not spamming the heck out of our show everywhere, so it's mainly from word of mouth. And if this is something that's been helpful to you and you enjoy the conversation, we enjoy the conversation and everybody that's chatting and the back and forth and all of that. So if there's somebody else that might be interested in us, send them a link or something. Let them know about the show and that, we're really trying to be better musicians ourselves, and, they might have something to offer to help us out, and we hope that we'll also help them out. So until next week, you can always find us on the Facebook group, and we're also on Instagram, but the Facebook group has a lot of other content. In fact, this week I posted a bunch of links that Dan curated together regarding synthesizers and soundtrack. I've been listening through them. They're fantastic. There's, I don't know, like 20 different things on there, and they're really good. And there's been quite a few of them that I haven't heard before that I was like, damn, this is good. I want to go back and listen to this. My personal recommendation that maybe you haven't heard would be John Harrison's work on Creep Show, which is something Dan turned me on to. Fantastic. But go check that out if you are on Facebook. So anyways, thanks everybody. Thanks Dan, and we'll catch you all next time.
Cheers.